Hey, son,
Howdy.
the Italians don't win every race, but they do win the right ones. all credit to that. That's a special power. All right, you ready to go, son?
I am ready to go.
Hello, welcome to Hard Compound, the American take on Formula One. Today was Monza, the Italian Grand Prix. The Tifosi had something to cheer about. Surprise victory by Charles Leclerc. This has been quite the season. There are legit 3 teams with legit chance of winning the Constructors. And that's not including Mercedes. We have 2 drivers that are going to battle it out to the very last race to determine who's the champion. We've had 7, 8 winners. We had, 4 multiple winners, right? So Lando, Charles, Max. Has Lewis won the race?
Yep.
Yeah. That's a season.
7 total winners.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been fun. And this was a fun one too. Kind of
why don't you give me your take?
Yeah, epitomized this season, I think. It's been really interesting, right? We kind of started out the season assuming Red Bull was going to dominate and assuming Max was going to dominate, and it turned out that way. He won 7 of the first 9 races or something like that. And he hasn't won since June. And Red Bull, therefore, have not won since June. And now we're at a point where McLaren is 8 points back of Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari not that much further behind.
Ferrari just 39. 8 races, couple sprints.
Listen, the way Red Bull's going right now, it's not unreasonable to believe that they could even end up 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, which was pretty much unthinkable before the season started.
Right.
But this race, alone was a lot of fun, really interesting. I think the middle part of the race, there wasn't too much happening. You kind of just had to wait around and see what was going on. And then all of a sudden, the strategies played out. And 15 laps to go, you're thinking, oh shit, Leclerc might have a legitimate shot to win this race, assuming his tires hold up. And then 10 laps to go, and you're thinking, I think he might win, but
right.
It's a little sketch.
I was that way. It was about 5 laps. I'm like, I think Ozzy's going to catch him, I think. And even, I think in the, wouldn't have been the cool down room, but I'm pretty sure even, was it Max that said, I didn't think Charles's tires were going to last. You know, I think even Lewis said the same thing. I think they were all like, how the hell did he do that?
Well, there were multiple radio messages to both McLaren drivers that said, do you think your tires are going to hang on to the end of this race? And both of them said, absolutely not.
Yep.
So they came into pit, which seemed like the correct decision. Ultimately, somehow Charles had enough of an advantage and his tires just lasted long enough. I think given 1 or 2 more laps, right, he probably would have gotten passed by Oscar, but the race ended sort of just in time for him. And what a win to get. This season for Leclerc, he must have made a deal with the devil, right? Because he's just been he won his home race in Monaco. He won at Monza in front of all the Ferrari fans. That's a pretty great season, all things considered. If you're not winning the Drivers' Championship, at least you win probably the 2 most important races for you on the calendar.
Yeah. I think we've said this before. I certainly have. I think Max is just so talented. And right nipping at Max, you'll have Lando. And we still got Lewis is still on the grid. Alonso's still on the grid. Charles Leclerc is one of the top drivers. With these other drivers who are at least as good, maybe a little bit better, maybe, and in better cars, it's going to be just nearly impossible. He can go his whole career not win a championship. But you're right, to drive for Ferrari, to win again at Monza, to get that win at Monaco, that's special. But you talked about Oscar almost getting him, Lando. Maybe McLaren stumbles into it because they have a legit shot at winning the Constructors. And in fact, they should. They should take the lead next week. Lando has a legit shot at winning the driver championship. But I don't know. They've got the car. They clearly have the best car. And anybody who's been saying all year long, oh, Max is only winning because he has the best car, they're dumb. Max has been getting the most out of the fourth best car. He's currently in the lead in the fourth best car. But, I mean, once again, Lando blows it at the start. They've lacked that killer instinct. We've said this all year long. McLaren and Lando seem to lack that killer instinct. I mean, this could haunt them. We said last week, Lando needs to gain about 8+ points every weekend. He did exactly that this weekend. But he could have gotten more. You always say that. He could have gotten more. And we don't know. There could be a crash next week. He could be out. That's a tough order. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think McLaren needs to decide what they want. Do you want Lando to win the Drivers' Championship? Or is it okay if you just win the Constructors' Championship? Do you want a happy team where everyone's all happy with themselves and nobody's upset, but internally they fucking hate each other? Because you know Lando hates Oscar right now. You know he hates Oscar right now.
Yeah.
Frankly speaking, there was no reason for Oscar to do what he did at the start of this race. No reason whatsoever. They had the best car in this race. There was no reason to fight each other. Lando didn't have a great start, but it was acceptable enough. He was going to stay ahead of everybody. Unless Oscar fucked with him, which he did. And it screwed Lando's race. It screwed George Russell's race. And Russell probably should have finished ahead of Max. Didn't, because of what Oscar did at the beginning of the race.
Yep.
Could have given McLaren a couple extra points lead. All I'm saying is they're all like, oh, you know, you're free to fight each other. You know, do whatever you want. There's rules of engagement, but we don't have a number one driver, blah, blah, blah. They're screwing themselves.
Yeah. So often you see, you know, team principals say, oh, there's no number one driver. But you know they're lying because their actions reveal it. This is one of those weird cases where you're like, wait, their actions actually are in sync with what they're saying, but what they're saying and doing is stupid.
Correct.
You know, they need to. And I have to say, I watched the Sky broadcast on ESPN, and everyone raved about Oscar's move, and it was amazing. And then I watched the condensed episode on F1 TV. So different announcers, and they also were just raving about Oscar's move. And I thought they were all wrong because the moment I saw that, I was like, wait, you guys start at 1 and 2. Lando's start, as you said, wasn't great, but it was acceptable. Oscar's move was a great move, but it was so high risk.
Yes.
I said, I mean, he may not give a shit that he screwed George Russell, but actually those points may have helped McLaren by putting Russell in front of Max at the end of the race. But it was so high risk for like what? Oh, instead of Lando Oscar, it's now Oscar Lando. I mean, the way he cut in front of George and then went around, it's like everybody, I think, missed a point by raving at the quality of the move. But, you know, the strategy was poor.
I gotta say, I like the balls on Oscar.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. All I'm saying is McLaren are screwing themselves over by allowing him to do that. Lando is playing the team game right now, and McLaren wants him to play the team game. And so he's doing right by his team. Good for you. Unfortunately, that might mean he ends up not winning the driver championship. And I think Oscar kind of has a little bit more aggression, grit, don't give a fuck attitude than Lando does. And Lando and McLaren both need that. We've been saying that for weeks now. They need that. And Oscar has it, but the team and Lando don't seem to have it. And that is, I guess we'll say this. McLaren should have swapped those two drivers around at the end of the race. Give Lando an extra 3 points.
I wondered how feasible that was because I'm like,
he was a couple seconds back.
Not doing that? Yep.
And Sainz was, 10, 15 seconds behind them?
Sainz was well back, yep.
It would have been straightforward. They absolutely should have done it, given Lando an extra 3 points. When Oscar won his race, they should not have allowed that to happen. Lando should have had those extra 7 points. Instead of 62 points back, he'd be 52. Instead of 8 points a week, he would need 6.5. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
And McLaren is screwing themselves out of that opportunity right now. If they continue to do it, then, they may win one prize, the Constructor's title. But I think given how good that car is this season, you want both. And it doesn't look like they want both right now.
Yeah, maybe Red Bull's free fall caught everyone by surprise. Maybe McLaren's speed caught everyone by surprise. And McLaren internally was just, hey, we're not favoring anyone. We're just going to have good races and we're going to keep moving up the standings. And I think, as you said a couple months ago, it was like, hey, no, we've got the best car. So, what do they have? They've got the best car in 3 wins this year?
Correct. Yeah.
Charles alone has 2.
Mercedes has 3.
Yeah, this is not good. Yeah.
Well, Ferrari has 3, Mercedes has 3, McLaren has 3, and then Red Bull, aka Max Verstappen, has 7. So
yeah, this is tough. And I'm looking at the standings now. Max with 303, Lando 241. So that's 62 points, 8 races left, 2 sprints. Next race is Baku. Perez usually does well in Baku. Red Bull usually does well, but they're in, I don't say free fall, but shit, they even had a bad pit stop this week. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Actually, there were a lot of bad pit stops this week, which was kind of weird to see. But yeah, the Red Bull team is very interesting this season. And a lot of people have been finally sort of saying, Perez probably should no longer be in that car anymore. I think 2 seasons ago, he should have been done. But, they kept him and that was fine because he was, coming in second or third or whatever. And Red Bull was dominating and it didn't matter. He was doing enough. Red Bull won the Constructors. Frankly, Max has won almost half of the races this season. He's still leading the Drivers' Championship and may end up winning the Drivers' Championship if, McLaren and Lando don't get their act together. So if Red Bull don't win the Constructors' title, frankly, that's entirely down to Sergio Perez. Max has done everything in his power to will that team to victory.
He has, although I will say that, all season long we've been saying, look, Max is getting the most out of this car. Folks just saying, oh, it's all the car, don't know what they're talking about. And I think the last couple months have just sort of proven us right. And Sergio has just been bad this year. But I think we're seeing that car is just being much tougher to drive. And I will say this, his drive this week I thought was good enough to where I think any rumors that persist, like, oh, they're going to have to replace him this season, that's not happening. And especially, he does well in Baku. If he does well in Baku, it's just not happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, he's not helped the team as much as I think we think he could have.
All I'm saying is Carlos Sainz was on the outs at Ferrari to start out this season, bringing Hamilton in. And you look at how the end of last season went for Ferrari. Had he raced a little bit better, they would have come P2 in the Constructors instead of the P3 that they ended up in. I kind of think that was a contributing factor to letting him go. And if Red Bull don't end up winning the Constructors this season, a lot of that comes down to how poorly Perez has done in that car this season, especially compared to his teammate Max. And I just don't see a reason necessarily to continue having him as your number 2 driver if he's not really providing anything positive on the track.
I agree. Well, let me throw this out at you because Lewis Hamilton complained about his qualifying this week. Now, he's going off to Ferrari next year, but I think the case can be made that Mercedes have the second best car. And yet, Mercedes won't even sniff the Constructors' Championship this year. Lewis Hamilton won't even sniff the Drivers' Championship this year. I think had you told me at any point in the past 15 years, Lewis Hamilton will have the second best car, Mercedes will have the second best car, and they won't even be in the running, that would have been a shock to me.
I think that's true, but I think they have the second best car starting from halfway through the season. Right.
Right.
So they were pretty dismal to start out this season, as they were last season, and kind of figured it out a little bit earlier on this season. And so they kind of gave up, a big lead to the other three teams there. I think you got to look at the gap between McLaren and Mercedes, though, and try to understand that. I mean, they're using the same power unit. So how is McLaren so much better than Mercedes? That realistically doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They've really gone in kind of the wrong direction, this Mercedes team, and they need to figure out something, hopefully, next year or within the next couple of seasons to really get back on top.
Yeah, that might be a bigger story. Toto's still there. Lewis Hamilton is still there. The Mercedes power unit is powering the car that we say is the best car overall, that very likely should win the constructors. It could deliver a driver championship, but it's not Mercedes. So yeah, you're right. There is something in that package that they flubbed. Yeah, that's a good point. Why don't you give me your top 5 for Monza, Patrick?
Top 5. I think driver of the day's got to go to Leclerc. I mean, what a gutsy performance. Qualified well. And after sort of that scrap between Oscar and Lando and George at the start of the race, he made up some places. He drove really well, consistently just kind of hung around and then looked after his tires and ended up winning this race from kind of out of nowhere. I don't think anybody expected it to happen. So pretty good performance from him overall. It was great to see all the Tifosi and all these Italians and the mechanics and everybody from the Ferrari garage just like belting out the Italian national anthem. Always good scenes, I think, at Italy. So
yep.
Then I've got Oscar second. So I agree with you. I think high risk move at the start of the race. Really no reason to, given your standing in the constructors title and your teammates standing in the drivers championship. But I kind of like that he doesn't seem to care and he's just going for it. He's a racer and he puts in good moves and takes risks. I like to see that, especially from a young guy, and he pulls it off. Has a really good race overall. I think showed more pace than Lando in this race. I liked it. I thought he drove really well. I think
he did.
He should have, or the team should have, forced him to not do any of that. But I liked that he took it on anyways.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is about drivers. Drivers first.
Then I got George. I think qualified really well. Ended up racing really well. I think was pretty unfortunate at the start to kind of got cut off by Oscar. I think he was good to not smash into the back of him, actually. Unfortunately, had some damage. Kind of was losing time. Had to come in for an early pit stop. And then made up a lot of positions throughout the race. Ended up passing Perez later on in the race. Got close to Max. I thought he had a solid race and probably should have ended up a lot higher, if not for some damage at the start of the race. Then I've got Alex Albon. I think, just consistently good performer. Got another couple points for that lowly Williams team, showing his new teammate kind of how it's done, the kind of pace you can have in that car. I think he did really well, had some good battles with, I think, Aston's and some of the Haas cars. So good race from him.
Albon's been putting in the work week after week. You especially are always singing his praises. I mean, it's just, he's stuck. There's nowhere to go. He's at that garbage Williams car. And, I guess they could bring him into Red Bull. I don't think Vols, the team principal at Williams, might let him go, but they replace Sergio. I guess he could jump there, but otherwise, Mercedes is locked up, Ferrari's locked up, McLaren is locked up. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, the only other place is that Audi team potentially, but I don't know. Yeah, good from Albon again. And then maybe kind of a surprise in 5, I have Kevin Magnussen. I think Kevin Magnussen's an interesting driver, and I think this week kind of proved it. He's real scrappy, maybe goes over the line on occasion, but sometimes he pulls out some really solid performances. This week he got another, good point for Haas. I think they're only, a few points back of that RB team for sixth in the constructors right now. So, every point matters for them. And I think he did really well to get up there. I know he took a penalty and then after the race ended up getting banned for the next race because of too many penalty points on his license. But nonetheless, points are really valuable for some of those bottom tier teams, and getting points in that Haas is really important.
Yeah, I don't know how much additional money they'll get at the end of the season, but you're right. Yeah, every point matters. Solid drive. Nico had a good weekend. K-Mag, a little bit reckless, but he got the job done. I thought the 2 penalty points he received was a bit harsh. And so now I think it's 12 in a year. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, he will not get to race at Baku. Everyone assumes it will be Oliver Behrman, who knows the Ferrari engine, which Haas uses. So you have Charles Leclerc, total agreement. Oscar, yep. George, yep. Albon, K-Max. K-Max, I'm a little bit suspicious of. All right, switching to the soft compound. Speaking of Alex Albon, 9th place, another good race. His longtime teammate Logan Sargeant is no longer with us.
Well, he's not driving in Formula One.
Right.
He's still alive, I think. But
as far as I know, he's still alive. And how do you say his replacement's name?
Colapinto.
Colapinto. Franco Colapinto. He did a respectable drive. Came at P12. I thought that was pretty good. Just want to take a moment to talk about Logan Sargeant because he was a disappointment. Us American fans, we want an American team. We're denied that. Haas is a semi-American team, but not really. It's American owner. He outsources everything, mostly to Ferrari. Most of the operations are in Europe, and he underfunds the team. So that's no fun. If we can't have an American team, let's have an American driver. So we finally get Logan Sargeant. Not the best. But, I hate to say it because I just think Logan was a bit of a failure. He had plenty of chances, and he didn't get the job done. And we also didn't even really get a sense of who he was. It's like, look, I get that, it's like head down, got to focus. I'm here to race. But it's like you come in 17th, 18th, 19th every week, and we don't even know who you are. Who does he like? Who's his girlfriend? Where does he live? Does he hang out with the other drivers? This was tough, and I don't know when we're going to see another American driver anytime soon.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issue with some of that is just the way or the path for drivers to get into F1 is so streamlined. And it's pretty much you have to go through the formula ranks. You have to be a part of the FIA, go through the formula ranks, drive in generally F3, F2, and then potentially get a spot in F1. And so for Americans, and realistically, most non-European drivers, that means your whole family has to move to Europe. You can't really do that without a shitload of money.
Yeah.
And so I think Logan Sargeant is one of those drivers, comes from a wealthy background. He's got rich Florida parents and he's just very reserved, doesn't give out a whole lot. He didn't seem to really have his head on straight at Williams. He just really struggled there on the track. And I think that, kind of made him seem like sort of not really allow himself to express himself much to fans or different audiences or whatever. I think, unfortunately, a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's a terrible car. It's a bad team. That's a hard thing to come into as a rookie, I think. But unfortunately, he didn't really give himself too many chances anyways. He didn't do much for himself either. So I agree with you. I think overall disappointing. I think there's a problem with the path for young drivers to get into Formula One. I think that needs to change. And I think until that changes, if we do get more American drivers, it may be a lot of the same, unfortunately.
And how about James Foles, who runs the team there at Williams? Garbage car still. And dude, I understand why he fires Logan Sargeant mid-season, but he brings in some money. How do you say his name again? Carlo Pinto? It's like, well, I don't think he was their reserve driver, and they've signed Albon and Carlos Sainz for next year, so they can't bring Carlos Sainz in to fill that spot. And the dude just starts talking trash about Mick Schumacher. Like he was waiting in the wings. He's driven that car. No, he's not driven that car, but he's driven in F1. Give him a shot. No, he's no good. Like damn. Vols basically ended 2 young careers because we're now never going to see Mick Schumacher drive in F1 again. He sat on the sidelines too long. And after that, I think everyone knows, look, but damn, what do you got to lose?
Yeah, I think I didn't really expect to ever see Mick Schumacher in F1 again, but you're right. That was tough. I'm like reasonably confident that James Foles has like high functioning autism, because he just like, whenever I hear an interview from him, I'm like, damn, dude, you just have no idea how to read the room. Like, not even a little bit. And I think this was a case where it was like, you literally didn't have to say any of that. And Toto Wolff was even like, bro, what the fuck are you saying? Like,
Right.
Why are you saying that? Don't say that.
Exactly. Like everybody loves F1, and a lot of people don't like to talk about the parts that they love. It's like, oh, what do you got? You got Max, you got Christian Horner, you got Fernando Alonso. These guys come in swinging the big D. Hey, man, I'm the star. Make this about me. It's like Hollywood. It's a sort of a different version of Hollywood. You got to be a dick, but it's like, hey, it is not mostly about me. It is all about me. And we kind of like a lot of that. We like to see that sometimes, just coming in, hey, I'm the guy. But we don't like to see it, like you said, in the sort of the person where it's not swagger, it's just an inability to understand how other people are perceiving things.
Yeah.
It's like that's a fundamental difference. So anyway, let's move to a better topic, a more positive topic, which is, we touched on this at the beginning, is this season. Damn, I don't know, F1 2025 is going to be maybe the best ever. But so we've had, what did you say, 7 winners? We've had 4 multiple race winners. Ferrari is sniffing at the Constructors' Championship with 8 races left. McLaren should win the Constructors' Championship. Lando and Max are going to come down to the final race probably to decide who's the driver championship. And then we got all this other news. Lewis to Ferrari. We've almost forgotten that. Carlos to Williams. Carlos Sainz to Williams. We've almost forgotten that. Hulkenberg is going to be going to Audi because Audi's taking over that garbage Sauber team. And then we get the fun news. Okay, sure, Logan gets fired. That's no fun. But Ocon got fired. And we're like, yeah, he's a dick. Of course they fired him, But then he gets hired, He's going to Haas. And then Mario Binotto from Ferrari, he's coming back, I tell you, this is a good season, Patrick.
It is a good season. I think, what's it called? Drive to Survive. They're going to have a field day with this season.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a lot of drama, a lot of changes, a lot of excitement about the future. And, this season itself has delivered in a lot of ways as well. So it's fun coming down to the last 8 races.
Right. And I haven't seen Drive to Survive in so long. Didn't they do 2 episodes? Was it on Haas or was it on Renault? I think they did 2 episodes on Renault. And I'm like, shit, they cursed because Renault is imploding. The French are revolting from what I hear. They protest because Renault's going to get rid of being a manufacturer. They're just going to start buying engines. And I'm like, just sell the damn team at that point. Yeah. If you're Renault, one of the historic brands in F1, and it's like, oh yeah, from now on, we're just going to, we'll buy an engine from Ferrari. I'm like, that is That is a fall. That is too humiliating of a fall, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. That whole management of that team has been horrible. And I think a number of years ago, when Cyril was the team principal, he was trying to get things to go in the right direction and making moves, and signed Ricardo from Red Bull, and that was kind of a big deal. And then he got the boot, and then Otmar came in, and he was trying to make moves and trying to, fix all the horrible parts of that team. And then for no reason got kicked to the curb. And I just think the management of that team is embarrassing. It's shameful. It seems very French from the outside, where they just seem to want to fail. They want everything to be bad just so that they can complain about it. Like, I don't understand it at all, but...
Yeah, because I liked Cyril, and I thought he was making some good moves. And I mean, he was hemmed in by, it was a garbage engine. And I don't know how much he could have impacted that, because now we're seeing, look, the ownership structure is just not getting it done. And then, like I said, Otmar, he was a solid guy. He was from the U.S., and it seemed as if they booted him for the failure of him not knowing what they were doing behind his back.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. So I think if I were going to write F1 books, one would have to be on the downfall of Renault. Although another one, we done been told you. Hey, listeners, we done been told you. When the founder of Red Bull died, we said that's it for Red Bull. It may not happen right away, but this man loved F1, and he spent on F1, and he indulged F1. And we said as soon as he dies, the biggest issue isn't going to be because he was pals with Helmut. And Helmut has nothing to do but get in the way, which he does very well. And he let Christian Horner be in charge. And the corporate HR types hate people like Christian Horner, because he's going to want to do it his way. And just, they have a visceral reaction to people like Christian Horner. And let me tell you, we're seeing it. Red Bull, the spending cap coming in, so they can't just throw money around and keep all the top engineers and all the top mechanics and all the top design people, similar to what Mercedes is facing. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing two great F1 teams kind of, I don't say free fall, but things are not going well.
Yeah, I mean, Alpine is shameful, and Red Bull is just, they are trending in the wrong direction. They had their era of fun. Unfortunately for them, not quite as long as Mercedes' era of fun. But, they're still at least in the mix, and they still have the best driver on the grid. So at the very least, they're competitive. Renault should probably be, well, they definitely should be in the top 5, and realistically should be competitive within the top 3. And they are, well, I don't even know where they are now. 8th, a few points ahead of Williams. So, they're closer to 10th than they are to 7th. So, in terms of total points, which is just embarrassing.
Across the line, that's our segment where we choose the winners or the podium of the next race. Next race is Azerbaijan, Baku. If we choose a driver and that he does finish in the top 5, we get 1 point. If we choose him in the exact right spot, we get 3 points. The next race is in 2 weeks. That's a race that favors typically Perez, that favors some of these street guys. We'll see. Patrick, before we make our predictions for Baku, what are the current standings?
All I'm saying is I'm pulling out a pretty nice lead with just 8 races to go. So coming into this weekend, I was ahead 56 points to your 37, 19 points ahead.
Dang.
I scored 4 points to your 1 this weekend.
How did I only get 1?
Well, yeah. So top 5 ended up being Leclerc, Piastri, Norris, Sainz, Hamilton. Your top 5 predictions were Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Russell, Ocon. So you got 1 point for Leclerc. Not the correct position, but in the top 5. And then I had Norris, Hamilton, Sainz, Piastri, Alonso. So I had 1 point each for Norris, Hamilton, Sainz, and Piastri. Unfortunately, I didn't get any of them in the correct spot, but still an extra 3 points I pulled out on you this week. So
it's going to be tough.
Current score is 60-38. 22 points.
22 points, 8 races. We don't do sprints.
It's like 3. That's not good. You got to outscore me by 3 a week, basically.
I'm going to have to hit some money shots, get some guys in the exact right spot.
Yeah.
Okay. Who goes first?
You have first pick this week.
Yes. So I've been talking up Sergio Perez, but I don't think he's going to get it done. So I'm going to go with Max.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to take Lando, Oscar, 1-2. McLaren will take the lead of the constructors.
Oh, nice. And if they get him 1-2, then it's likely Lando would get, again, at least 8 points, right? Because of, so that would, that's what he needs. Okay, so Lando, Oscar. I'm going to choose Sergio and then George Russell.
Nice. And I'm going to take Hamilton and Carlos.
Ooh. All right, then I will take Charles and Nico Hulkenberg.
Ooh.
Nico's been through some wars. I think he can handle that course.
Let's see. I'm going to take Stroll.
Wow.
He usually ends up in the barrier in this race coming into like one of the last couple turns. I feel like he always smashes into that barrier. But I think this week he'll get it done, or next race.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I actually, whenever I see Lance Stroll, the Benny Hill Yakety Sax music starts playing in my head. But so you have for Baku, and I think it's in 2 weeks, Lando, Oscar, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, and Lance Stroll. I have Max and Sergio, a Red Bull 1-2. They're going to need it. George Russell, Charles Leclerc, then Nico Hulkenberg. Any crazy predictions, Patrick?
Let's see. We think that potentially Ollie Behrman might race for Haas next weekend, given Kevin Magnussen's 1 race suspension. Ollie Behrman is currently 15th in the Drivers' Championship out of 22 total drivers. I think he's going to score points in a Haas, and he's going to move up past Pierre Gasly for 14th in the Drivers' Championship and maintain that until the end of the season.
My goodness, imagine that. That would be good, but that's such a indictment of Renault / Alpine. Although, talking about K-Max, I'm like, wait, do his penalty points reset? So you're saying after Baku, there will be 7 races. He'll have 0 penalty points. He'll be in a Haas, and he knows he's not getting signed for next year. Is that someone I want behind the wheel? You know, what kind of destruction, right? What kind of havoc can he wreak on that grid? Oh, that's a good one. I did not have a crazy prediction until we started talking, but here's a good one. Somehow this is going to get it done. Christian Horner will somehow get Alex Albon into that Red Bull for 2025.
Nice.
That's my crazy prediction. Get the band back together.
And then he'll say, we don't have a number 1 driver. Let them race.
All right. I want to thank you all for listening to everybody's most beloved father and son F1 podcast. It is much appreciated. We are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
You just finished listening to Hard Compound, recorded in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and around the world.